Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Annette and this is the 6th episode, I guess, of the series called Behind Papers, where we try to understand together how the academic world works and how research works. And we started this journey in the past, I guess, February or something, and now it's July, so it's going a bit slower than what I planned just because many things happen in my life. Yeah, I mean, it's just going slower, but it's still going on. That's what matters. And so in this episode, we are going to discuss quantitative analysis and then focus on statistics, especially. So as we said in the previous video, in the last video, we have methods to analyze qualitative data. So to get results when we conduct a qualitative research. And the same goes for quantitative research, right? So we have methods that are specifically used to analyze quantitative data. And so we're going to discuss about them in this video. And the next videos are going to be about statistics. And I will give more space to that topic. I will try not to get too much into details, but I also don't want to skip parts that might be relevant. I just wanted to give more space to that topic, as I already said, because statistics plays a huge role in our society. So I think it's good to give more space to such a topic. So with that being said, if you're interested in what I'm going to say in this video, please keep watching the video after the intro. So let's get started with the topic of today, which is about methods that are used to analyze quantitative data. So as we said in the first couple of videos, I think quantitative research is believed to be the most objective, right? Which it actually is the most objective type of research, but that doesn't mean that subjectivity doesn't play a role. So it doesn't mean that researchers do not influence the process of quantitative research. We saw that when we conduct research, it happens because we have to create, for example, a questionnaire, and creating a questionnaire is always influenced by the preferences of the researchers, and then how we collect data and how we select the sample and stuff like that, right? So in that process, there is still a degree of influence from researchers, so that quantitative research is not as objective as we think. And at the same time, we also have subjectivity playing a role when we analyze data. It's always for the same argument that we are humans, that we always have our way of thinking, our perspectives, that we either conduct research by ourselves, so then we cannot really discuss with other researchers, or that we discuss with other researchers, and then we have to come to a conclusion. So it's always a balance between trying to make it as objective as possible, but still being aware and also explaining when we are subjective. So this is very important because, as I said, statistics specifically, but also in general, quantitative research is believed to be, the truth or things like that. But that's not the case. And that doesn't mean that research is not fundamental. Like, research is imperative. Like, society needs research. We need different types of research. We need to kind of trust research or trust information, but in an open-minded way. So we're like, okay, we need to believe in something. We need to give relevance to certain information, but always with, like, it's like kind of a paradox, but like always with like the awareness that things might be different, and that we need to participate in society. And we can do that by, as I said, like using the information that researchers provide us, but still trying to kind of prove them in our everyday life. Okay, of course, it depends on the type of research we're talking about, but like the goal is to be aware of how research works and how to deal with the information that we gather every day, right? So in this video, we are going to discuss methods to analyze quantitative data, but that were already collected. So methods that analyze secondary data. So we are going to name them as I will explain them. And the second video, like the second part of this episode, which, as I said, is going to be divided in more parts, will be about statistics, so how to analyze raw quantitative data. Before continuing, I wanted to make a side note that I already made probably in the video about how to analyze qualitative data, because I've been using the word method, but I would say more of like type of analysis, because it will be clearer when I will explain the first one. I would say we have type of analysis, so like how it works or where you take the information from and what you kind of want to achieve. But then there will be methods to do that, right? So yeah, I would say I would like correct myself and say like type of quantitative analysis. So the first one being the secondary analysis of quantitative data. With the secondary analysis of quantitative data, we are basically going to take data that has been previously collected by others, and then we're going to conduct an analysis on that. So what does it mean? It means that we are going to use information that were probably collected for other purposes other than research, but it's like available already, right? So for example, we are going to take data that were collected from a CTO, let's say, because the CTO wanted to know how many people lived in an apartment, how many people lived in a low middle income neighborhood or something like that, right? Just for the sake of having like an overview of its citizens and like how society was working, like just of its citizens and like how things were distributed, but like just maybe to register stuff, right? So it wasn't like for the sake of saying, oh, let's see how many people live in this situation so we can make something about that. It was just maybe, oh, let's just collect data, right? So to have like a picture of the city. But then researchers come and say, oh, can we take this data? So we are going to conduct something. And then the goal, like the type of research is using previous data to do something else. And then we're going to use methods, right? Which is what I was trying to explain before. So in that way, you can, for example, translate the data in a way that you can use statistics to actually make an analysis on the data and have specific results. So of course, this type of research has both pros and cons, and as in everything, right? So the pros are that usually using data that is already available saves time and costs. Usually these large data sets were actually collected in a rigorous way, because they usually come from, as I said, like CTOs, or they were like national samples or something like that. So they were, for example, maybe really covering all the population and things like that. So the data set is rich, is usually, as I said, rigorous and well established. So then, of course, it's good, right? Because we discussed already the risk of losing data and things like that. So that we're going to exclude that risk. And we are not wasting time, we are not wasting money to collect data, we're just conducting the analysis. So these are great pros. So with these pros, for example, we can also conduct subgroups researchers, so we can divide the data into subgroups, so that we are going to conduct a specific research on a subgroup and another research on another subgroup. So we can play with the data, right? Because we have these large data sets and we can conduct several analyses and things like that. So that's huge, right? You can see things that were not considered before, because the goal of those data collections was to collect specific and I would say like static information over a population, and then they were not really thinking, oh, let's see how this relates to that, for example. They were just like, okay, let's have this overview. So then you have time when you're going to take that data to think and to be like, oh, we should maybe look into this, into that. And then you can also use this and then reconduct the same research, the same data collection, and see how it changed over time. So, but you did the first part, like the first part was already there. You only had to analyze the data, and you can make comparisons, and it's very useful to see how society developed and things like that, right? So you have this big pro on what you can actually do, right, with secondary analysis. As we are familiar with, there are also cons. So these cons are that you, of course, have a data set that you're not familiar with, because someone else collected that and you don't know really how the process of collecting data went, right? And you also see data out of context, because you just have this data set, but you're not familiar with like the environment and that period of time and things like that, right? You just have these numbers, this information, and you also lose kind of the complexity of the data, because you are just deciding to analyze a certain level of that data, so you are going to miss everything else, and so you're going to be very specific, but then of course it doesn't take into account all the rest. So yes, we are going to get results, we are going to conduct an analysis, but we must be aware that this is just like part of what could have been said on that data set. And also the fact that we don't know, as I said before, how things were conducted, so we cannot really know whether this data set is reliable. I said before that usually coming from national institutions or things that we can trust them, we can trust this data set, but still we don't really know, right? And they might have missed something very important, and we don't know how the process went. And also, we don't know if there was maybe another variable, another thing that they didn't analyze, that they didn't collect, which could have changed our analysis. So maybe if they would have collected something about, I don't know, the size of the house, we could have had another result. So it's, as I said, always useful, always nice, but yeah, it's, the cons is that we don't really know how they collect the data and whether they're missing something, and whether they miss something, and so whether our results are reliable or not. I think it also depends on the type of analysis you conduct, and the more complex, the more risky is to believe the results, in the sense that if we are going to make a very simple analysis between very basic variables, then yes, results might be valid. But then if we want to make like a complex analysis and we're using a lot of variables, and then we're missing that one, which is going to be discussed better in statistics, what I'm talking about now, then we might have had a different result. And type of analysis is of quantitative data, of course, is the meta-analysis. And we already came across meta-analysis when we discussed methods or like types of qualitative analysis. And so we are going to kind of repeat the same thing. So meta-analysis in quantitative research is when we are going to take studies that have been conducted before on a specific topic, and we are trying to compare them and also trying to explore something more. So when we want to compare them, we're going through the studies and trying to see the results and whether they came to the same conclusions or not, and trying to understand why. Maybe there was a different sample, and maybe they did something different. So we are trying to get a conclusion out of the conclusions. And of course, when you do that, you have, of course, your research question that and the methods you want to use that leads you to the conclusion you're looking for. Another way you can conduct meta-analysis is when you conduct other analyses using, of course, the data that they collected, but to find out something different, whether there is a variable that can change the results. So of course, when you conduct research, you are going to select which variables you want to test, you want to analyze, and for example, when you then conduct a statistical analysis, you can't do everything, right? But because you can't do everything, then you might miss a variable that might change the whole story. So the goal of meta-analysis can also be trying to do that extra analysis and see whether that might change the results or not. And so it's very useful, again, meta-analysis, because you either make a summary of a lot of studies, and the most recent one that kind of changed, or hopefully is changing the way we look at mental issues, was the meta-analysis made by some researchers, and they collected the studies that were conducted on whether there are some chemical imbalances in our brain causing depression. And the conclusion was that this chemical imbalance theory is actually just a theory. So it wasn't, they weren't saying no, absolutely there's nothing and blah blah, but they were saying up to now we didn't find anything like that really. But that was just a meta-analysis that made a bit of rumors, but this discussion is going on since years, and I sustain that result so much, and we will also discuss about mental health and stuff in future videos. It's going to be a very relevant topic to me. But yeah, this was one of the most famous meta-analyses that were conducted recently, and so it's very useful, right? And also the idea of making another analysis with variables that were not considered. So why it is very useful, so these are the pros, there are also cons, and this is, for example, the fact that despite researchers using meta-analysis always try to use the relevant information, such as sample size, in how much time they collected the data, and which variables they selected and stuff like that, not all researchers report information as they should. So this goes back to the discussions we were having at the beginning of this series. If you remember the criteria such as transparency, reliability, and things like that. And of course, if researchers are not reporting information properly, we are going to miss crucial elements to conduct a meta-analysis. So this is a big con. But yeah, despite that, using meta-analysis can be crucial for society and to change how we perceive things, and the results that influence the way society works. So we can have big breakthrough thanks to meta-analysis. So going a bit deeper on the secondary analysis, pros and cons or whatever, we can say that secondary analysis can lead to certain misinterpretations, especially when we use official data sets, so data sets that were collected by police or agencies and stuff like that. So we already discussed the pros and cons. I just wanted to go a bit deeper and reflect on the controversies of secondary analysis. So first, we also need to think about the fact that definitions change. So if we take, for example, the word crime, and there were crimes reported, the definition of crime that existed 50 years ago is not really the same as now, or at least it has changed a bit, right? Because we have different type of crimes and things like that, and the way we define a crime, right? So if we use data set that collected a certain number of crimes, can we still apply that to our everyday life now? Because maybe it's not meaning the same thing, and so it's not that useful for us anymore. It doesn't really give us any concrete information to do actually something about the problem. So we also need to think about the meaning that people used to give to words in the past. So if we are using the data set that was collected years ago, we should make it sure that what they meant is also what we mean. And it's not easy. How do you know that? Like, you maybe find it out, maybe the researchers are still alive and you can ask them if they have any notes, but most of the time I don't think it's that easy to find it out. And to make an example on what I said before, that there might have been another variable that could change things, could change the results. For example, if we are taking a data set that was reporting the number of crimes and the ethnic and ethnicity of people committing the crimes, we maybe through analysis they found out that people coming from specific ethnicities were committing more crimes than others. So the results are saying like, yeah, people from this ethnicity are criminals and things like that, right? But then maybe they didn't collect the fact that crimes that are committed by people from certain ethnicities are reported more than crimes committed by people from other ethnicities. So maybe people from a specific ethnicity were conducting crimes as well. It's just that they weren't reported. So of course, then we think that there is this type of connection between people from a certain ethnicity and the number of crimes they commit. Yeah, but if we would have taken in consideration how often crimes are reported, then we could have had a different result, right? So this is like a couple of side understandings on secondary analysis and the misunderstandings it might lead to. So another type of quantitative analysis that is emerging is it's using the so-called big data, namely data coming from internet, social media and stuff. So for example, the number of people using Instagram, the number of people following specific content. So of course, Instagram collects this type of data and other social media in the internet and stuff. Not really for the sake of exploring a specific topic, just for the sake of having like an overview of the users. But yeah, you can use these big data and conduct specific type of research. I think this is like the most known type of quantitative analysis, I would say, in the sense that we see posts saying, oh, this type of people using Instagram do that and things like that, right? The thing is like, most of the time, these data are not really reliable because, of course, you can lie when like creating your account, and you can miss certain information. And it's so big that it's still not that easy to use these big data to conduct quantitative analysis, and I'm not sure if it will ever be. But yeah, just to say, this is an emerging field and it exists. So yeah, this video was about, as we said, types of quantitative analyses, and I hope it was nice to hear about them and that made you think somehow and you learned something new. The next videos are going to be about statistics, as I already said. And yeah, with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, activate the notification bell so that you won't miss any other video, and leave a comment below if you would like to. I'm really happy to see comments and reply to them and have a conversation. And otherwise, you can reach me out here on my Instagram page that I'm writing the name down here. And yeah, with that being said, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!